If you showed the Eastern Conference standings to an Atlanta Hawks fan about 2 months ago, they would think you're crazy and on drugs. But after a 130 to 129 victory over the 1 seed Detroit Pistons, the Atlanta Hawks find themselves currently out of the play-in and in the 5 seed. The Hawks have won 14 of their last 15 games and are 15-2 since the All-Star break. Now, there were questions about what the team would look like without their franchise player Trae Young, but the Hawks have turned things around and look as good as they've been over the last several seasons. And despite the skepticism of how serious this Hawks team is, they cannot be taken lightly. In this video, we're going to talk about how the Hawks are doing it and how big of a threat they are to make some serious noise in the postseason. So while I do that, man, make sure y'all sit back, relax, hit the subscribe button, like, comment, share with your folks. Let's get right into it. Let's go, Hawks! Was that a little bit too much? Yeah. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Going for Two. I am Q1 Humphreys. And y'all can see by the intro, man, we talking about them Atlanta Hawks. We talking about them Hawks, man. As a Hawks fan, the best thing about the Hawks being good is that I get to hop on the camera and talk about them to y'all. You know what I'm saying? Because when the Hawks be mid or they be trash, I be like, okay, I'm not going to talk about the Hawks because that's just me. That's just me fandoming over a team that's not that good. But right now, the Hawks are all right. The Hawks are all right, man. They've won 14 of their last 15 games. A big-time win against the Detroit Pistons without Cade, yes. But before that, the Pistons had won, 3 straight games without Cade Cunningham. So that's still a very good team. They're not as good with Cade. They're not as good as they are with Cade. But that's still a very good team. But a 130 to 129 win right there. And we're currently sitting in the 5 seed. To be honest, y'all, when the Trae Young trade went down, I was like, okay, bet. We're going to make a run. But I don't know if we're going to get out the play-in. But look at us now. With 9 games to go, we are in the 5 seed. And we kind of control our destiny for the most part. I know I think Toronto owns a tiebreaker over us. But if we go out there and we got to win games, we should finish as the 5 seed, which would match us up right now with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, what is interesting, and I'm going to go into this later in the video, what's interesting is that we played the Cavs twice for these last 9 games. If we can win both of them games along with winning majority of the games we have left, we could potentially get in that 4 seed. Potentially. That's not math. It's a long shot, but it's not mathematically out of the picture yet. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, man. Let's talk about the Hawks and what they're doing right now, how they're getting the job done. Ever since the All-Star break, the Hawks are 15-2. That is second or kind of tied for second for the best record in that span. I think the Spurs are 17-2 and OKC is also 15-2 since the All-Star break. They're averaging 122.1 points per game, which is third in the NBA over that span. And they're only giving up like 107 points per game on the defensive end, which is really, really good. You know what I'm saying? And I know people are going to say, oh, the bad teams, you're playing against bad teams, etc. Hey, they're all pros. Now, yes, there are some teams that are definitely tanking, like the Nets and, other teams that we played against. I can't name all the teams that we've beaten over this streak. But, like it or not, we're playing good basketball. And I'm a Hawks fan. I've been a Hawks fan long enough. I remember last year and the year before, what put us in the play-in was our inability to beat teams that we should be beating. So the fact that we're doing that now, we're seeing now the fruits. You know what I'm saying? The Atlanta Hawks, before their streak, were 27-31. They are now, we are now 41-32. 9 games above 500. I don't remember the last time we were 9 games above 500. I know y'all see the stats every time. They always pop up on my Instagram feed about how mid the Hawks are and how they have the same amount of wins and the same amount of losses over a time span. Well, I tell you this, that time is done. That time is over. The Hawks are balling, and let's dive even deeper up on that. So when the Trae Young trade went down, it was an obvious indicator that the Hawks were all in on Jalen Johnson, who had made a leap. Who had made a leap in the time that Trae Young missed this season. But the way he's playing right now, the Hawks are leaning on him. They're leaning on him. He's averaging 22 plus points per game, 10.8 rebounds per game, and 8.6 assists per game. He is one of 2 players averaging 20, 10, and 5 in the NBA right now. And you could probably guess who the other person is Nikola Jokic. So for your best player to be in an exclusive class beside a guy that's thought of, I believe he is the best player in the game in Nikola Jokic, that's got to make you feel really good. Jalen Johnson is doing everything for the Atlanta Hawks right now. He's He's pulling down rebounds. He's putting pressure on the basket. He's pushing the pace. He's facilitating. He's stepped up heavily on the defensive end because earlier in the season he was a really bad defender and it wasn't talked about as much. But over the course of the last several weeks and the last several months, really ever since the trade went down, he's been playing very good defensively. He's just giving an effort. You know, the guy is a athletic freak. All you gotta do is give effort on that end, and you're gonna have some kind of success, some kind of results. So JJ, to make this kind of jump, you know, Hawks fans, if y'all watch Jalen Johnson for the last 2 seasons, y'all knew that a jump was coming this season for sure. It was just about whether he would stay healthy. But to jump to a all-star, maybe all-NBA player was something that nobody saw coming. And I don't know about y'all, but I did not see his playmaking being as good as it is. I know when Quinn Snyder took the job, Quinn Snyder tried to lean on him as a secondary playmaker when Trae Young was on the team. But for him to be like this guy that, okay, bet, he gets the ball off the glass and he don't got to pass. He gonna run the offense. You know what I'm saying? It's been an absolute sight to see. Now, besides Jalen Johnson, has been Nickeil Alexander-Walker. When the Hawks signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker, it was simple what his role was gonna be. You're gonna come in, be the leader of the second unit, 3 and D. But what this guy doing this year, man, he looked like he got it. For the first time in his career, he's averaging 20 points per game. His career high averaging 20.4 points per game. On the season, he's shooting about, 46% from the field, 39% from 3. But over the last 2 weeks, he's increased in every single kind of stat that we're looking at here. He's up to 22 points per game, shooting over 50% from the field, and shooting a scorching hot 46% from 3. So you got a guy that's shooting 40% from 3, and he's taking and making a lot of threes. You're gonna have a lot of success. You know, you look at other guys across the league, like think about Malik Beasley last season. Malik Beasley was shooting nearly 40%, if not above 40% last season, and look at the improvement that the Pistons made last season. You look at a couple years ago, Dante DiVincenzo hit 300 threes, shooting very good from three-point line. And the Knicks were really, really good a couple seasons ago. And I look at Nickeil Alexander-Walker, he fits that mold. He's playing defense. He's scoring. He's shooting the ball at a high clip. He a lot of times, he's the perimeter ball handler, the perimeter shot creator for the Atlanta Hawks. And to be honest, coming into the season, I did not think he would be that crazy. I thought, you know, I looked at how he played in Minnesota. I said, bet, that's somebody that could come and play beside Trae Young, beside Dyson Daniels, beside Jalen Johnson, all the guys we got now. But what he's become this season has been something that has become even more. And I'm looking forward to seeing him in the postseason and seeing him in the future in an Atlanta Hawks uniform. Now, I know I just talked about Jalen Johnson and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but the Atlanta Hawks, they get it done with it's a full team effort. You have your best players, but it's a full team effort. You know, and what the Hawks do a great job of is utilizing their athleticism as a unit, utilizing their pace. They play one of the fastest games in the NBA, and they move that ball around, bro. They move the ball around. The way that they move the ball around reminds me of a 2014-2015 Atlanta Hawks that won 60 games. Yes, you had your point guard and maybe your best player at the time in Jeff Teague, but everybody ate. Any given night, somebody could will this team to a win. You know what I'm saying? We saw CJ McCollum go off the other night against the Pistons. We saw Nickeil Alexander-Walker go off. He's been going off crazy. We saw him go off 40 against the Magic. Jalen Johnson is filling up the stat sheet every game. We saw Dyson Daniels give us a 20-point near triple-double a couple games ago when Jalen Johnson was out with injury. So the Atlanta Hawks are just getting it done as a unit. You know, and what's interesting to me is that they're averaging 29.9 rebounds, 29.9 assists per game this season. And to do that without a solidified point guard is crazy. You know, I think that's third in the NBA in terms of assists per game. And ahead of them is the San Antonio Spurs, who has a plethora of point guards along with Wembanyama, and they just play a really good basketball over there. And then number 2 is the Denver Nuggets, who have Nikola Jokic, who's averaging like over double-digit assists. Oh, and to even go even further about how it's a whole team thing. Surprisingly enough, and when I found this out a couple weeks ago, or I think we were still up there a couple weeks ago. When I found out that the 5-man lineup of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, CJ McCollum, Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, and Double O was the second best 5 in terms of point differential in the NBA, I was shocked. But that just talks all about how the guys on the team are bought in and they're playing a cohesive way of basketball where everything just is going very, very well. You know what I'm saying? speaking of CJ McCollum, I think another big thing for the Atlanta Hawks was their trade deadline moves. Of course, I'm gonna add the Trae Young trade to the trade deadline moves because that was a trade before the deadline. I know it wasn't exactly at the deadline, but for the sake of the video, Trae Young was traded essentially salary dump. That's the truth. Essentially salary dump for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. Now I believe that Trae Young is worth more than those two guys, but the situation that was, I don't think we could get more for him. But I talk about the additions of CJ McCollum and Jonathan Kuminga and Jock Landale all at the trade deadline. Now, I know Corey Kispert was in the trade too with CJ, but Corey Kispert ain't really been too good, so I'm not really gonna mention him. Respect to you, Corey. Hopefully you turn around for the playoffs. But those additions have made wonders. You know what I'm saying? Let's start with Jock Landale. Jock Landale had like 30 points in his debut against the Utah Jazz. And I know it's Utah Jazz, but 30 points hitting a bunch of threes. I think he had like 7 threes that game. Jock Landale gave us some reliable minutes, a reliable substitute for Double O at the 5, because I think that was a big reason why we struggled at the beginning of the season as well, because Kristaps Porzingis was never in the lineup. And with no Kristaps Porzingis, you really had no 5-man. I know we had a couple of games from Christian Koloko, but how much was that going to last? You know what I'm saying? Jock Landale could come in and give us good minutes at the times when Double O needs a spell, and then he kind of plays the same game. He's not the biggest guy on the floor, but he can step out, hit a 3, bang, and get some rebounds. He's been good for us this season. You look at Jonathan Kuminga. Jonathan Kuminga fits right in with the wings that we have, the wings like Dyson Daniels, the wings like Nikelson Walker, Ricochet, Jalen Johnson, all these guys, Mo Gay. He fits in with those guys. He's a guy who's going to play defense and get out and run. And then think about Kuminga too. Kuminga too can create a little bit. He's not the best at creating his own shot, but he can definitely do it. I think Kuminga is a good addition. I am concerned about them paying him a large sum of money this offseason, but if we can get him back on a team-friendly deal, let's do it. You know what I'm saying? The Hawks, crazy enough, are 9-0 in the games he's played. You know what I'm saying? Now, I think he's averaging like 13 points over the course of that span, including the 2 big 20-point games, and he has a couple of duds, but I think having him on the team is a plus. I don't think we're losing nothing with having Jonathan Kuminga on the team. And then looking at CJ McCollum reminds me of that Lou Will for the 2021 playoff run. That old vet guard that can come in and be some creation off the bench. CJ McCollum's actually averaging over 18 points per game. He's our third leading scorer ever since the All-Star break. He's been balling and 2 nights ago against the Pistons, he scored 10 straight points in the fourth quarter, hitting tough shots. CJ McCollum has kind of become the late game shot creator for the Atlanta Hawks. And part of me is kind of like, you know what I'm saying? We could do better than CJ McCollum, but he's all right. We got to see what happens in the playoffs. I know McCollum has his history of tour date shooting in the postseason and in big games, but I think with these guys and with the spacing that we have, he got to be successful. You got to be successful, CJ. Come on. So I love CJ. I think we're also thinking about bringing him back on another team-friendly deal because he's on an expiring contract as well. But I love these additions, bro. The additions that we got, man, they're playing really, really well. And they've came and they've added to the team. We're playing our best basketball of the season. We're currently 5th in the Eastern Conference. Part of me doesn't want to look back, but I'm thinking to myself, dang, Trae Young came back and we lost 7 straight games. I don't know what our record was, but we ended up being under like 5 or 6 games, under 500 after Trae Young ended up going out before we got traded. If he didn't come back, where would we be in the Eastern Conference? Now I'm not gonna throw it all on Trae Young. I think Kristaps Porzingis not being in the lineup as well as not having a legitimate center duo for majority of the season also played a big part on our defensive struggles. But it's just crazy to think about, And I'm gonna be honest. You look at the team right now, the way they're playing right now. I don't think you want to see this Hawks team. I think out of all the teams that are kind of down there with the Hawks and like the Magic and the Sixers and the Raptors and the Heat, you'd rather see those other teams rather than the Hawks, simply because the Hawks are going to play. They don't play a style that, you can scout for, but they don't play a style that you can just know what you're getting every night. They don't have a centric player that's just going to take all the shots and do everything. Jalen Johnson's really good. Jalen Johnson's he's not on the ball as much as we, as much as we think. You know what I'm saying? And any guy could give it to you. And I think the thing about the Hawks is they're most of the time they're the more athletic team on the floor. And if they're more athletic than you, then they're going to work way, way harder on defensive end, and they're going to get out and run. Now, I say all this to say, there are some concerns that I have about the Hawks and their team construction right now and potentially in the postseason. The Atlanta Hawks struggle in the half court. They struggle in half court. I just talked about how athletic they are and they got to run. But if the Hawks don't get stops or the defense goes back and gets set, it's a struggle to score, bro, because we don't have that perimeter creation. You know, that's why Trey was so good, because Trey was so good at making shots for himself and then making shots for others. You know what I'm saying? Jalen Johnson is getting there. He's getting there. But even at the end of the game, Jalen Johnson doesn't have the ball in his hands. You know, most of the time it's either Nickeil Alexander-Walker or it's to C.J. McCollum. You know what I'm saying? So we just gotta see. We just gotta see what happens. I also think Double O is not a starting center in this league. I think he's a really, really great rotation piece. You know, really, really great rotation piece. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think that he is a starting center, because against the bigger and better centers, he gets overpowered. He got fouled out against Jalen Duren in the last game against the Pistons. You know what I'm saying? So it's just very, very tough. But I would say all that. I would say all this to say, man, I think the Hawks catch somebody sleeping. If somebody sleep on the Hawks, they could be going home first round for sure. You know, I think this team should not be taken lightly. We're gonna play hard every single game, and I'm excited to see what happens. But let me know in the comment section your thoughts on them Hawks. But until next time, that's all I got for y'all. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share with your folks. Until next time, I'm going for 2. We out of here. Yeah.